A body hangs upside down in a public square. Crowds scream, some spit, some cry, nobody looks away, and the man hanging there once controlled an entire country through fear alone. This is how it ends. Now let me show you how it started. Because it starts smaller than you'd ever expect, and that's exactly what should scare you. Before we go further, hit subscribe right now. Because what you're about to watch isn't just old history. It's a step-by-step blueprint of how a country loses its freedom without most people even noticing until it's too late. And this channel exists to make sure you never miss those warning signs again. Let's rewind to 1918. World War I just ended and Italy is a wreck. Over 500,000 soldiers dead, cities broke, factories shut down, workers on strike in the streets. And even though Italy technically won the war, it doesn't feel like a win. It feels like betrayal. Italians start calling it the mutilated victory. All that blood and nothing to show for it. Into that wreckage walks a failed teacher turned loudmouth journalist named Benito Mussolini. He wasn't born dangerous. He started as a socialist, screaming about revolution from street corners. But somewhere in that chaos, Mussolini discovers something far more powerful than any political idea. He discovers that fear spreads faster than truth, and violence works faster than votes. In 1919, he starts a small paramilitary group. Barely anyone takes it seriously. No money, no real army. Just men in black shirts who are willing to do what politicians won't. And that's all it takes. His men don't argue with socialists. They beat them in the street. They don't debate union leaders. They burn their offices to the ground. They force political enemies to drink castor oil until their bodies break down in public, as a warning to anyone watching. And the police. They look the other way, every single time. By 1922, Mussolini doesn't need permission anymore. He marches. Tens of thousands of his men move on Rome, and the government, too afraid of civil war, simply surrenders without firing a shot. The king himself hands Mussolini control of the entire country. Let that sink in for 1 second. Mussolini didn't have to fight his way into power. He was invited in. By the same men who thought they could control him. They were catastrophically wrong. For 2 years, Mussolini plays it patient. Parliament still exists. Elections still happen. On the surface, Italy still looks like a democracy. But underneath, the violence never actually stopped. It just goes quiet, waiting. Then in May of 1924, one man makes a decision that will cost him everything. His name is Giacomo Matteotti, a socialist member of parliament, calm, precis, fearless, and he's about to do something nobody else has dared to do. Italy just held an election that was rigged from the start. Armed squads standing outside polling stations, ballots destroyed, voters threatened at gunpoint, and Matteotti stands up in front of the entire Italian parliament and reads it all out loud. Names, dates, evidence. He isn't attacking a policy. He's exposing the machine that keeps Mussolini alive. To his face, in front of everyone. Every single person in that room understands exactly what he's just done. 10 days later, Matteotti walks out of his home in Rome, and he's dragged off the street by men tied directly to Mussolini's inner circle. He fights back. Hard enough that he's stabbed inside that car, and then he's gone. 56 days. That's how long Italy waits without answers. Rumors explode through every city. Is he alive? Did he escape? Is the government finally about to fall? Then, in mid-August, his body is pulled out of a shallow grave outside Rome, and the entire country's worst fear becomes real. The reaction is instant. Opposition politicians walk out of parliament completely, hoping the king will finally step in. Independent newspapers turn against Mussolini, and for a few short weeks, it actually looks like this might be the end of him. So what does he do? He doesn't deny it. He doesn't apologize. In January 1925, Mussolini stands in front of parliament and basically says, if this is what it takes to hold power, then this is exactly what will keep happening. That single moment changes everything. Before it, Italy is a broken democracy pretending to follow its own laws. After it, the pretending is over completely. Within 2 years, every opposition party is banned. Every independent newspaper is shut down or seized by force. Speaking against the government isn't frowned upon anymore. It's a crime that gets you taken in the middle of the night. And that's when Mussolini builds the machine that will terrify a nation for the next 2 decades, the secret police, later known as OVRA. Its entire job is to listen, watch, and crush resistance before it can even take shape. Neighbors report on neighbors. Coworkers report on coworkers. Even at family dinner tables, people learn to measure every single word, because loyalty to the state now outranks loyalty to blood. People vanish for the smallest things. A joke told to the wrong person. A letter with the wrong sentence. Attendance at the wrong meeting. Thousands are shipped off to remote prison islands, cut off from family, from lawyers, from any hope of a fair trial. But here's the part that separates Mussolini from ordinary tyrants. He doesn't just want people afraid. He wants them watching. Trials are staged like theater. Verdicts are decided before a single piece of evidence is shown. State newspapers turn punishment into public spectacle. not to inform the public, but to terrify them into silence. And once every visible enemy is crushed, Mussolini turns on the ones still hiding inside his own movement. Old allies who helped him rise to power are quietly pushed out the second they show a flicker of doubt. Military officers who question his strategy are reassigned, forced into early retirement, or watched around the clock. This isn't chaos, this is surgical. Every single move is designed to erase a future threat before it can ever fully exist, and an entire nation starts policing its own thoughts before the government even has to ask. By the 1930s, Mussolini isn't satisfied being just a national leader anymore. He genuinely believes he's resurrecting the glory of ancient Rome, and that belief pushes him towards something far more dangerous. In 1935, he orders the invasion of Ethiopia, one of the last independent nations left in Africa. Italian forces use chemical weapons against a badly outgunned army, in direct violation of international law, while entire villages burn and civilians pay the price. The world condemns it. Sanctions follow. But inside Italy, Mussolini spins the war into a symbol of national pride, and anyone who questions it is branded a traitor overnight, a label that can destroy a life in a matter of days. Then, in 1938, the regime crosses into territory that shocks even his own supporters. Under growing pressure from Nazi Germany, Mussolini introduces Italy's racial laws, stripping Jewish Italians of their basic rights almost overnight. Teachers lose their jobs mid-semester. Students are expelled from school without warning. Government workers are fired on the spot. Marriages between Jews and non-Jews are banned outright. Families who've lived in the same towns for generations are suddenly treated like strangers. Listed by name, tracked by the state, cast out of the only life they've ever known. It isn't mass killing yet, but it's the deliberate, bureaucratic destruction of people's lives. Carried out in plain sight, stamped with official paperwork instead of hidden in secrecy. And just when it feels like Mussolini's grip couldn't get any tighter, he makes the single biggest mistake of his life. In 1940, he joins Hitler's war, convinced it'll be short and easy. It isn't. Italian troops are humiliated in North Africa. His invasion of Greece turns into such a disaster that Germany has to step in and rescue him. And back home, the war delivers exactly what Mussolini spent 2 decades trying to prevent: hunger, ruin, and doubt. Bombs fall on Milan, on Naples, on Rome itself. Food runs out, and the propaganda machine that once made Mussolini look untouchable starts collapsing under the sheer weight of daily suffering. So he tightens the grip even harder. More arrests, more surveillance, more punishment for anyone showing exhaustion with the war. But for the first time in over 20 years, fear stops working. People are too hungry, too broken, too far past the edge to be controlled by threats anymore. Then, in July 1943, the unthinkable happens. The very council Mussolini built to obey him instead votes against him. The king has him arrested. Just like that, more than 2 decades of iron rule ends in a single afternoon. For one brief moment, Italy believes it's finally over. It isn't. German commandos launch a daring raid and pull Mussolini out of custody, propping him up as the puppet leader of a new fascist state in the north, a government that exists in name only, entirely run from Berlin. And this final chapter of his rule turns out to be the most violent one of all. Resistance fighters, former political rivals, even old fascist allies who voted against him. All of them are hunted down without mercy. Public executions return to town squares. Bodies are left out as warnings. Even his own son-in-law isn't spared, executed for daring to turn against him. Loyalty, family, history together, none of it matters anymore. If you're seen as a threat, you're erased, no trial required. By April 1945, the entire structure is collapsing. The war is lost, his allies are retreating, and Mussolini makes one final, desperate move. Disguising himself in a German soldier's uniform and slipping into a retreating convoy, hoping to vanish into Switzerland before anyone realizes who he really is. He doesn't make it far. On April 27th, near a small village on Lake Como, Italian partisans stop the convoy for inspection. And there he is, the most feared man in Italy, hiding in plain sight, recognized instantly despite the disguise. The next morning, he's executed. No trial, no ceremony. Just a fast, brutal end to 23 years of total control. But it's what happens after his death that turns this into one of the most haunting images of the entire war. His body is dragged to Milan and strung up in a public square. The exact same kind of square where his own regime once executed the people who dared resist him. Crowds gather by the thousands. Some stand frozen in silence. Others unleash 2 decades of rage they'd been forced to swallow. For a man who ruled through public punishment and public fear, his own ending mirrors everything he built. Visible, brutal, and impossible to look away from. And here's the part that should really stay with you. Every single step that got Italy here felt small in the moment. One rigged election. One murdered politician. One speech where a leader admitted the truth and dared anyone to stop him. Nobody in 1919 believed it would end with a body hanging in a public square. That's exactly how it always starts. If this kind of history hits different when you see it laid out piece by piece, law by law, silence by silence. Make sure you're subscribed to the War Files right now, because this channel exists to expose exactly how power gets stolen in plain sight. Turn on notifications, because the next story might be the one that changes how you see the world you're living in right now.